The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor, and 60 pairs of eyes turned to watch my wife destroy what was left of my dignity. But let me back up 30 seconds, because that's when Vanessa Mercer decided to end our marriage in front of half the neighborhood. "Lucas, honey, come here for a picture," she called out, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. The kind of tone that meant trouble was coming my way like a freight train. I should have known better. Should have stayed by the bar, nursing my beer and watching the circus from a safe distance. But no, like an idiot, I walked over to where she stood with Derek Monroe, her ex-boyfriend, who'd somehow wormed his way back into our social circle. The camera phone was already out, held by her cousin Trish, who lived for drama like a vampire lives for blood. Vanessa wrapped one arm around Derek's waist, pulling him close, while gesturing for me to join them. The three of us, one happy family. "Come on, Luke, don't be shy," Derek said with that smug grin I'd grown to hate. "It's your wife's birthday party." Right. My wife's birthday party. The one she'd planned without asking my input, invited people I couldn't stand, and held at the most expensive venue in town. All charged to our joint credit card, naturally. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stepped closer, leaning in to kiss Vanessa's cheek like any loving husband would do. That's when it happened. She placed both hands on my chest and shoved me backward, hard enough that I stumbled and knocked over a cocktail table. The champagne flute hit the floor with a crystalline crash that seemed to echo forever in the suddenly silent room. "Don't touch me," she snapped, loud enough for everyone to hear. "God, you're so needy and pathetic. Can't you see I'm trying to have a conversation?" The silence stretched out like a rubber band about to snap. I could feel the weight of 60 stares, the whispered conversations starting up like a swarm of angry bees. My face burned with humiliation, but something else was building inside me. Something cold and calculating. "You okay, Luke?" Dove Lindell appeared at my elbow, her nurse's instincts kicking in. She'd been Vanessa's best friend since college, but lately, I'd noticed her looking at my wife with something that wasn't quite friendship anymore. "Perfectly fine," I said, straightening my tie and forcing a smile. "Vanessa's just excited about her party. You know how she gets when she's the center of attention." But I wasn't fine, not even close. As I looked around the room, I saw the faces of our neighbors, our friends, people I'd known for years. Some looked embarrassed for me. Others seemed to be enjoying the show. A few were already pulling out their phones, probably texting their spouses who couldn't make it tonight. Derek had his arm around Vanessa now, whispering something in her ear that made her laugh. That high, tinkling laugh she used to reserve for me, back when we were happy. Back when I thought we were happy. "Want to dance?" I asked Dove, extending my hand. She looked surprised, but took it. Sure. We moved to the small dance floor Vanessa had insisted on, even though it meant cramming everyone else into half the space. As we swayed to some generic jazz music, I caught sight of my wife watching us with narrowed eyes. Good. Let her watch. "Luke," Dove said quietly. "What was that about?" "That," I replied, "was my wife showing her true colors. Finally." Dove was quiet for a moment, then said, "You don't deserve that. No one does." "No," I agreed, spinning her gently. "They don't." The song ended, and I walked Dove back to the bar. She ordered a wine. I stuck with beer. Domestic beer, which I knew would irritate Vanessa. She'd specifically told me to drink the imported stuff tonight because it looks better. "Lucas Mercer, you get over here right now." Vanessa's voice cut across the room like a whip crack. Every conversation stopped again. I took a long sip of my beer and looked at her. She stood next to the gift table, hands on her hips, face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "I think I'll stay right here," I called back. "The view's better." A few people laughed nervously. Derek whispered something to Vanessa, probably trying to calm her down, but she shook him off. "This is my party," she shouted. "You're embarrassing me." "I'm embarrassing you?" I set down my beer and walked toward her, my voice carrying clearly in the quiet room. "Vanessa, you just shoved your husband in front of 60 people because he tried to kiss you. At your birthday party, that he helped pay for." Her face went pale, then red again. "You're drunk. I've had one beer. But you know what? I think I'll have another." "Dove, want to keep me company at the bar?" I turned my back on my wife and walked away. Behind me, I heard her sharp intake of breath, the murmur of voices starting up again, and Derek's voice trying to smooth things over. But I was done smoothing things over. Dove and I spent the next hour at the bar, talking about everything except the elephant in the room. She told me about her job at the hospital, the difficult patients, the long shifts. I told her about my auto shop, the classic cars I was restoring, the satisfaction of fixing something that was broken. "You're good with your hands," she said, then blushed. "I mean, mechanically speaking." "I know what you meant." I smiled at her, a real smile this time. "And thank you." Around 10 o'clock, people started leaving. Vanessa was holding court by the gift table, accepting congratulations and air kisses like some kind of royalty. Derek hadn't left her side all night, playing the part of the devoted friend a little too well for my taste. "I should go," Dove said, glancing at her watch. "Let me walk you to your car." Outside, the October air was crisp and clean after the stuffy atmosphere of the party. Dove's car was parked under a streetlight, and when she turned to say goodbye, I could see the concern in her eyes. "Are you going to be okay?" she asked. I thought about it for a moment. Really thought about it. "You know what? I think I am. For the first time in a long time." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "That's got my personal number on it, if you need someone to talk to." "Thanks, Dove. I mean that." She hesitated, then stood on her tiptoes and kissed my cheek. "You're a good man, Luke. Don't let anyone tell you different." I watched her drive away, then walked back toward the venue. Vanessa was waiting by the entrance, her face a mask of fury. "What the hell was that?" she demanded. "What was what?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about. Flirting with my best friend, ignoring me at my own party, making me look like a fool." I stared at her for a long moment. This woman I'd married 5 years ago, the one I'd thought I'd spend my life with. When had she become such a stranger? "Vanessa," I said quietly, "you made yourself look like a fool when you shoved me in front of everyone. I just refused to pretend it didn't happen. You embarrassed me. No, you embarrassed yourself. And me. And probably Derek, though he's too polite to say so." Her eyes flashed. "Leave Derek out of this." "Why? Because you're sleeping with him?" The question hung in the air between us, like a loaded gun. I hadn't meant to say it, hadn't even been sure I believed it, until the words came out of my mouth. But the look on her face told me everything I needed to know. "You're insane," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Am I? Then why has he been at our house 3 times this week? Why does he text you at midnight? Why did you light up like a Christmas tree when he walked into your party tonight?" She opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it again. For once in her life, Vanessa Mercer was speechless. "I'm going home," I said, pulling out my keys. "You can ride with Derek." I was halfway to my truck when she called after me. "Lucas, wait!" I turned around. She was standing under the venue's entrance light, looking smaller somehow, vulnerable. "We need to talk," she said. "Yeah," I agreed. "We do, but not tonight. Tonight I need to think." The drive home took 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. Our house sat on a quiet street in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone else's business. By tomorrow morning, half the block would know about Vanessa's little scene at the party. I parked in the garage and sat there for a moment, staring at the door that led into our kitchen. Our house. our life. Everything we'd built together over 5 years of marriage. Then I pulled out my phone and looked at Dove's business card. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, staring at financial documents and making lists. Our joint checking account. The mortgage on the house, which was in both our names but mostly paid for with money from my auto shop. The credit cards, maxed out from Vanessa's shopping sprees and social events. At 3 a.m, I called a locksmith. "I need all the locks changed on my house," I told him. "Today. First thing." "That's gonna cost extra for the rush job," he warned. "Money's not an issue." At 6 a.m, I called my lawyer. At 7, I called Dove. "Luke?" Her voice was thick with sleep. "Is everything okay?" "I'm sorry to wake you up, but I wanted to ask you something and I need an honest answer." "Okay. How long have you known about Vanessa and Derek?" There was a long pause. Then, "About 6 months. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I hoped she'd come to her senses, and because I didn't want to be the one to break your heart." "My heart's been broken for a while now, Dove. I just didn't want to admit it." Another pause. "What are you going to do?" "Something I should have done months ago. Can I ask you another favor?" "Of course." "Can you come over around 10? I might need a witness for what's about to happen." "I'll be there." The locksmith arrived at 8:30. By 9:15, every lock on the house had been changed. I gave him a generous tip and settled in to wait. Vanessa's car pulled into the driveway at 9:45. I watched from the living room window as she got out, looking like she'd slept in her clothes, which she probably had, either at Derek's place or at her cousin Trish's house. She tried her key in the front door. When it didn't work, she tried it again, jiggling the handle like that would somehow make it fit. Then she started pounding on the door. "Lucas, open this door right now." I waited until I heard Dove's car in the driveway before I answered. When I opened the door, Vanessa was standing there with her fist raised to knock again. She looked terrible, makeup smeared, hair a mess, the same dress she'd worn to the party wrinkled and stained. "What did you do to the locks?" she demanded. "I changed them." I stepped aside to let Dove in. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked fresh and clean and beautiful. Vanessa's eyes narrowed as she took in Dove's casual appearance. "What is she doing here?" "I asked her to come," I said. "We need to have a conversation, and I want a witness." "A witness? Lucas, what the hell is going on?" "Come in, but understand that this is my house now. You're here as a guest." She pushed past me into the living room, then stopped short. I'd spent the early morning hours removing every trace of her from the common areas. Her throw pillows, her decorative candles, her collection of romance novels, the framed photos of us together, all of it was gone. "Where are my things?" "Boxed up in the garage. You can take them when you leave." "When I leave? Lucas, I live here." "Not anymore." Dove cleared her throat. "Maybe I should go." "No," I said firmly. "Stay, please." Vanessa whirled on her former best friend. "This is your fault, isn't it? You've been poisoning him against me." "I haven't said a word against you," Dove replied calmly. "I didn't need to." "You don't." My voice cut through the room like a blade. "Don't you dare talk to her like that. Not in my house." Vanessa stared at me like she'd never seen me before. "Your house? This is our house. Check the deed. My name, my down payment, my credit score that qualified us for the mortgage. You've contributed exactly nothing to this house except debt and drama. I'm your wife. Are you? Because last night, you made it pretty clear that you don't want to be touched by me, that you find me needy and pathetic, that you'd rather spend your time with your ex-boyfriend than with your husband." She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. "Look, I was drunk last night. I said things I didn't mean." "You weren't drunk. You had 2 glasses of wine over 4 hours. I was watching." "You were watching me?" "I've been watching you for months, Vanessa. Watching you text Derek at all hours. Watching you lie about where you're going and who you're with. Watching you spend money we don't have on clothes and parties and gifts for everyone except me. Dove shifted uncomfortably in her chair. I'd almost forgotten she was there. I want you to leave, I continued. Pack whatever you need for a few days. The rest of your stuff will be in the garage whenever you want to pick it up. You can't throw me out of my own house. I'm not throwing you out. I'm asking you to leave. There's a difference. And if I refuse? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Then I call the police and show them the videos from last night. The ones where you publicly humiliated your husband, then spent the rest of the evening hanging all over another man. Her face went white. You recorded me? I didn't have to. Half the people at your party were recording. It's probably already on social media. That was a lie, but she didn't know that. Yet. This is insane, she said, but her voice had lost its edge. You're throwing away 5 years of marriage because of one bad night? I'm ending 5 years of marriage because I finally realized it's been over for a long time. We just haven't made it official yet. She looked at Dove, then back at me. Is this about her? Are you sleeping with my best friend? No, I said. This is about you sleeping with Derek. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I'm not admitting to anything, she finally said. You don't have to. Your face already did. Dove stood up. I should really go. Actually, I said, could you stay a little longer? I'd like to take you to lunch after Vanessa leaves. It was a calculated move, designed to twist the knife, and it worked. Vanessa's face flushed red with anger and humiliation. You bastard, she whispered. I've been called worse, usually by you. She stormed toward the stairs, probably heading for our bedroom to pack a bag, but she stopped at the bottom step and turned back. This isn't over, Lucas. Yes, I said quietly. It is. 20 minutes later, she came back downstairs with a suitcase and her laptop bag. She'd changed into jeans and a t-shirt, washed her face, and pulled her hair back. She looked more like the woman I'd married, and for just a moment, I felt a pang of regret. Then I remembered the look on her face when she shoved me last night, and the feeling passed. I'll be staying with Trish, she said. Good. She always liked drama. You two should get along great. She headed for the door, then stopped. What about us? What about our marriage? What about it? Are we getting divorced? I looked at Dove, who was pretending to study her hands. Then I looked back at my wife. That depends on you, I said. If you want to end things with Derek, go to counseling, and try to rebuild what we had, I'm willing to listen. But if you want to keep playing games, then yeah. We're getting divorced. She stared at me for a long moment. And if I choose Derek? Then you've made your choice, and I'll make mine. She left without another word. I watched from the window as she threw her bags in the car and backed out of the driveway. She didn't look back. That was brutal, Dove said quietly. It needed to be done. How do you feel? I thought about it. Lighter, like I've been carrying a weight I didn't even know was there. Dove smiled. Good. You deserve better than that. Do I? Sometimes I wonder if I just wasn't enough for her. Not exciting enough, not successful enough, not... Stop. Dove stood up and walked over to me. Don't you dare blame yourself for her choices. You're a good man, Luke. You work hard, you're honest, you're loyal. If she can't see that, it's her loss. Thanks. I needed to hear that. Now, she said, didn't you mention something about lunch? I laughed for the first time in months. I did, and I know just the place. The Rusty Anchor had been our neighborhood bar for as long as anyone could remember. It wasn't fancy, just a long wooden bar, a dozen tables, and a jukebox that hadn't been updated since the 80s. But the beer was cold, the burgers were good, and nobody bothered you if you wanted to drink alone. which made it the perfect place for Vanessa and Derek to stage their little ambush. Dove and I had been coming there for lunch twice a week for the past month. It started innocent enough, two friends grabbing a bite and talking about life. But somewhere along the way, it had become something more. Nothing physical, not yet, but there was definitely something building between us. We were sitting in our usual booth, sharing an order of loaded nachos, when they walked in. "Well, well," Derek said loud enough for the whole bar to hear. "Look who's here." I didn't turn around, but I could feel every eye in the place shifting to our table. The Rusty Anchor wasn't the kind of place where drama usually happened, which meant everyone was about to get a show. "Ignore them," Dove murmured. "Oh, I intend to." But Vanessa wasn't going to make it that easy. She slid into the booth across from us, forcing Dove to scoot over to make room. Derek remained standing, trying to look intimidating in his designer jeans and polo shirt. "Hello, Dove," Vanessa said with fake sweetness. "Fancy meeting you here." "Vanessa," Dove's voice was ice cold. "Derek." "Having a nice lunch?" Vanessa asked, looking pointedly at our shared nachos. "How cozy." I took a sip of my beer and looked at my wife. "Did you need something, or are you just here to make a scene?" "I'm here to talk to my husband. Is that allowed?" "Talk away, but make it quick. Dove and I have plans this afternoon." That got a reaction. Vanessa's fake smile slipped, and Derek's hands clenched into fists. "What kind of plans?" Derek demanded. I looked up at him, really looked at him for the first time. He was handsome enough, I supposed, in that generic catalog model way that some women found attractive. But there was something weak about his eyes, something that suggested he'd never had to fight for anything in his life. "The kind that are none of your business," I replied. "Everything about my girlfriend is my business." "Your girlfriend?" I laughed. "Is that what she is now? Because last I checked, she was still married to me." Vanessa flushed red. "That's just paperwork. We both know this marriage has been over for months." "You're right," I agreed. "It has been. I just didn't realize you'd already moved on to your next victim." "Victim?" Derek stepped closer to the table. "What's that supposed to mean?" I stood up slowly. I wasn't a big man, but I was solid from years of working with my hands. Derek was taller, but he had the soft look of someone who spent more time in boardrooms than gyms. "It means," I said quietly, "that Vanessa gets bored easily, and when she gets bored she moves on, usually to someone with more money or better connections. You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? Tell me, Derek, how much money have you spent on her in the past 6 months? Dinners, gifts, trips. I'm guessing it's more than you can afford." His face went pale, which told me I'd hit close to home. "That's enough," Vanessa snapped. "Derek, let's go." "No, I want to hear this," Derek said, his voice rising. "What makes you think you know so much about our relationship?" "Because I've been married to her for 5 years. I know how she operates. First, she makes you feel like the most important person in the world. Then she starts making little suggestions about things she needs, things she wants. Before you know it, you're maxing out credit cards trying to keep her happy. She's not like that with me. Isn't she? Then why are you driving a 3-year-old BMW instead of the new one you had 6 months ago? Why did you move from that nice condo downtown to the apartment complex on 5th Street? Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Vanessa was staring at me with something that might have been fear. "You've been checking up on me," Derek said. "I've been protecting my assets. See, when your girlfriend maxed out our joint credit cards, I had to do some digging to figure out where the money went. Turns out, a lot of it went to you. Dinners, hotel rooms, that weekend trip to Boston last month." Dove was watching this exchange with wide eyes. I could see her putting the pieces together, realizing just how deep Vanessa's betrayal went. "You paid for their dates," she said quietly, "with your own money." "Our money," I corrected, "which makes it even better." Vanessa finally found her voice. "You're pathetic. sitting here with my best friend, trying to make me jealous. I'm not trying to make you jealous, Vanessa. I'm trying to make you go away. This is my neighborhood, too. I have just as much right to be here as you do. Actually, you don't. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. I've been documenting everything. The credit card fraud, the adultery, the harassment. Keep pushing, and I'll file a restraining order. Credit card fraud? Derek looked confused. What's he talking about? Nothing, Vanessa said quickly. He's just trying to cause trouble. But Derek wasn't stupid, just naive. I could see him working it out in his head, realizing that the woman he thought he was saving from a bad marriage might not be quite the victim she'd portrayed herself to be. Vanessa, he said slowly, what credit card fraud? I used our joint credit cards to pay for things, she admitted. It's not fraud if my name is on the account. But you used them to pay for dates with him, Dove said, while you were still married to Luke. Derek ran a hand through his hair. That's really messed up, Van. Don't call her Van, I said. She hates that, always has. But I guess she never told you that, did she? The look Derek gave Vanessa was full of questions she clearly didn't want to answer. We should go, she said, standing up abruptly. Yeah, Derek agreed, but his voice had lost its edge. We should. They left without another word, but I could hear them arguing in the parking lot. Dove and I sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the muffled sounds of their fight through the bar's windows. That was intense, Dove finally said. That was necessary. Derek needed to know what he was getting into. Do you think it worked? I thought about the look on Derek's face when he realized Vanessa had been using my money to pay for their relationship. Yeah, I think it did. Good. Dove reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You deserve better than what she put you through. So do you. She was supposed to be your best friend. Some friend. She's been lying to me for months, using me to get information about you. What kind of information? Your schedule, your finances, your mood. She wanted to know when you'd be out of the house, when you'd be working late. I thought she was planning some kind of surprise for you. But now you know she was planning time alone with Derek. Dove nodded, looking sad. I feel like such an idiot. You're not an idiot. You trusted someone you cared about. That makes you a good person, not a stupid one. We finished our lunch in comfortable silence, then walked out to the parking lot together. Dove's car was parked next to my truck, and for a moment, we just stood there in the afternoon sunshine. Luke, she said, what happens now? Now I file for divorce and try to move on with my life. And us? Is there an us? I looked at her, really looked at her. Dove Lindell had been in my life for years, first as Vanessa's friend, then as my own. But somewhere along the way, she'd become something more important. Someone I looked forward to seeing, someone who made me laugh, someone who saw the best in me even when I couldn't see it myself. I'd like there to be, I said, if you're willing to wait for me to get my life sorted out. She smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her all day. I've been waiting for 2 years already. I think I can manage a little longer. 2 years? That's how long I've been in love with you, Luke. Even when I thought you were happy with Vanessa, even when I felt guilty for feeling that way about my best friend's husband. I stared at her, speechless. I know it's complicated, she continued, and I know the timing is terrible. But I couldn't let you think this was just some rebound thing for me. It's not. It's real. I reached out and touched her face, tracing the line of her cheek with my thumb. It's real for me, too. She leaned into my touch, closing her eyes. So what do we do now? Now, I said, we take it one day at a time, and we see what happens. 3 days later, Vanessa made her first mistake. She posted a photo on Instagram, her and Derek at some upscale restaurant downtown, both of them grinning at the camera like they didn't have a care in the world. The caption read, "Finally free to be with the man I love." Dacht new beginnings, Zaka true love, dachte no regrets. She'd tagged Derek, me, and about 20 other people, including Dove, which meant everyone in our social circle now knew exactly what had been going on behind my back. The comments started rolling in within minutes. Most of them were supportive, the kind of generic you go girl nonsense that people post when they don't really know what else to say. But a few were more pointed. "Isn't she still married?" someone asked. "How long has this been going on?" asked another. "Poor Luke," wrote a third. I screenshot the post and sent it to my lawyer, then sat back to watch the show. Vanessa had always been addicted to social media attention, but she'd just made a very public admission of adultery. In a no-fault divorce state, it wouldn't matter much legally, but it would matter socially. And in a small community like ours, social consequences could be just as devastating as legal ones. My phone rang around noon. It was Dan Murphy, my best mechanic and the closest thing I had to a best friend. "Dude," he said without preamble, "have you seen Facebook today?" "I don't really do Facebook." "Well, you might want to check it out. Your wife's having a very public meltdown." I logged into the Facebook account I'd created years ago and barely used. Vanessa had posted the same photo there, along with a long, rambling explanation of how she'd been trapped in a loveless marriage and had finally found the courage to follow her heart. The comments on Facebook were less kind than the ones on Instagram. People who knew us both were asking pointed questions about the timeline, about our marriage, about whether I knew what was going on. "This is a gift," I told Dan. "She's basically confessing to adultery in public." "Yeah, but she's also making you look like a chump. Half these comments are people feeling sorry for you." "Let them feel sorry for me. Sympathy's better than suspicion." "If you say so. But man, I'd be tempted to set the record straight." "Patience, Dan. Good things come to those who wait." I didn't have to wait long. By evening, Vanessa had posted 3 more photos and 2 more lengthy explanations of her journey to happiness. Each post got more desperate, more defensive, as people started asking harder questions. Then Trish, her cousin and supposed ally, made a comment that changed everything. "Girl, maybe you should talk to a lawyer before you post all this stuff online, just saying." Too late. I'd already screenshot everything and sent it to my attorney. The next morning, I got a call from Officer Janet Patel, a local cop I'd known since high school. "Luke," she said, "I need to ask you about something. We got a complaint last night about harassment." "What kind of harassment?" "Someone's been calling Derek Monroe at all hours, hanging up when he answers. His phone records show the calls are coming from your number." I frowned. "That's impossible. I haven't called Derek at all." "Can you prove that?" "Check my phone records. Better yet, check my phone." I pulled out my cell and scrolled through the call log. The last call I made was to my lawyer yesterday afternoon. "Huh, that's weird. Derek seemed pretty sure it was you." "Derek's trying to cause trouble. He knows I've got evidence of his affair with my wife, so he's trying to make me look like the bad guy." "Evidence?" I told her about the credit card charges, the social media posts, the timeline of their relationship. Janet listened without comment, but I could tell she was taking notes. "I'll look into it," she said finally. "But Luke, if someone is harassing Derek, and it's not you, then you might want to figure out who it is. This kind of thing has a way of escalating." After she hung up, I sat in my office thinking. Someone was calling Derek and hanging up. Someone with access to technology that could make it look like the calls were coming from my phone. Someone who wanted Derek to think I was harassing him. Someone who knew enough about technology to spoof a phone number. Someone like Vanessa. I called my lawyer and told him about the harassment complaint. He listened, then asked, "Do you have any proof that your wife might be behind this?" "Not yet, but I'm going to get some. Be careful, Luke. Don't do anything that could backfire on you." "I won't, but I'm not going to sit back and let her frame me for something I didn't do." That evening, I drove to Derek's apartment complex and parked across the street. I didn't have to wait long. Around 8 o'clock, Vanessa's car pulled into the parking lot. She sat in the driver's seat for a few minutes, talking on her phone. Then she got out and walked to Derek's building. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could see her gesturing angrily. She was upset about something, arguing with whoever was on the other end of the call. Then I saw her pull out a second phone. I grabbed my camera and zoomed in. It was an older model smartphone, not the iPhone she usually carried. She dialed a number, let it ring for a few seconds, then hung up. Then she dialed again. I took photos of everything. Her with both phones, the license plate of her car, the timestamp showing when and where the pictures were taken. Then I called Janet Patel. "I found your harasser," I told her, "and I've got proof." The next morning, Janet showed up at Derek's apartment with a warrant to search Vanessa's car. They found the burner phone in her glove compartment, along with a notebook containing my phone number and Derek's, plus a detailed schedule of when she'd been making the calls. "Why?" Janet asked when she called to tell me about the arrest. "Why go to all this trouble to frame you for harassment?" Because she knew I had evidence of her affair, and she wanted to discredit me before the divorce proceedings started. If I looked like a crazy, jealous husband who was stalking her boyfriend, no one would believe anything I said about her. That's pretty calculating. That's Vanessa. The harassment charges were dropped, of course, but the damage was done. Word spread quickly through our small community that Vanessa had tried to frame her own husband. The same social media accounts that had been supporting her journey to happiness suddenly went quiet. Derek, meanwhile, had apparently had enough. According to Dan, who heard it from his girlfriend, who heard it from her sister, who worked at the restaurant where it happened, Derek had broken up with Vanessa in a very public argument the night after her arrest. "She tried to drag me into her crazy scheme," he'd reportedly said. "I'm done with the drama." So now Vanessa was alone, facing divorce proceedings, potential criminal charges, and the complete collapse of her social standing. All because she'd gotten greedy and tried to destroy me along with our marriage. I should have felt sorry for her. Part of me did. But mostly, I felt relieved. For the first time in months, I could see a clear path forward, a path that led away from the chaos and manipulation that had defined our marriage, a path that led towards something better. Derek Monroe was dumber than I'd given him credit for, but apparently not dumb enough to stay away from my business. It was a Tuesday night, almost midnight, when my security system sent an alert to my phone. Someone was in the parking lot of Mercer Auto Repair, moving around behind the building where I kept the classic cars I was restoring. I threw on jeans and a jacket and drove to the shop, calling Janet Patel on the way. "I've got a possible break-in at my business," I told her. "I'm heading over there now." "Luke, don't confront anyone yourself. Wait for backup." "I'm not going to confront anyone. I'm just going to observe and document." That was mostly true. I parked across the street and watched as a figure moved around my lot with what looked like a crowbar. The security lights had been smashed, but there was enough moonlight for me to see that it was definitely Derek. He was trying to break into the garage where I kept my prize restoration project, a 1967 Mustang Fastback that I'd been working on for 3 years. The car was worth about $40,000 in its current condition, and twice that when I finished with it. I pulled out my phone and started recording as Derek pried at the garage door. He was making enough noise to wake the dead, grunting and cursing as he tried to force the lock. "Come on, you piece of shit," I heard him mutter. He finally got the door open and disappeared inside. A few seconds later, I heard the sound of breaking glass and metal being thrown around. He was trashing the place. That's when Janet pulled up, along with another patrol car. "He's inside the garage," I told her, showing her the video I'd recorded. "Been in there about 5 minutes." "Stay here," she ordered, then signaled to the other officers. They surrounded the building and called for Derek to come out. There was a long silence, then the sound of more things being broken. "Derek Monroe!" Janet called through a megaphone. "This is the police. Come out with your hands visible." More silence. Then, Derek appeared in the doorway, covered in motor oil and holding a tire iron. "Drop the weapon!" one of the officers shouted. Derek looked around wildly, like he was considering making a run for it. That's when he saw me standing by the patrol cars. "You!" he screamed, pointing the tire iron at me. "This is all your fault." "Drop the weapon now," Janet repeated. Derek took a step toward me, and 2 officers tackled him. The tire iron went flying, and Derek went down hard on the asphalt. "You ruined everything," he yelled as they cuffed him. "She was happy until you started your games." "What games?" I asked, genuinely curious. "The social media stuff, the harassment, turning everyone against her." I stared at him. "Derek, she posted that stuff herself. She made the harassment calls herself. I didn't turn anyone against her. She did that all by herself." "You're lying. Check the police reports. Check her phone records. Check the evidence from her arrest." Derek's face went pale as the implications sank in. She told me you were stalking us, that you were trying to destroy her reputation. And you believed her. She had proof, screenshots of the calls, copies of fake social media accounts, all of which she created herself. Janet helped Derek to his feet and started reading him his rights. As they walked him to the patrol car, he looked back at me with something that might have been regret. "I loved her," he said. "I know," I replied. "So did I." After Derek was taken away, I surveyed the damage to my shop. He'd smashed windows, overturned toolboxes, and poured motor oil all over my workbenches. But the Mustang was untouched. Apparently, he'd been too busy destroying everything else to focus on the car. "Insurance should cover most of this," Janet said, taking photos of the damage. "But it's going to be a mess to clean up. I've dealt with worse messes lately. Speaking of which, how are you holding up? This whole situation with your wife has been pretty intense." I thought about it. Honestly, I feel like I'm finally waking up from a bad dream. For months, I've been questioning myself, wondering if I was crazy or paranoid or just not good enough. Now I know it wasn't me. It never was you, Luke. Some people are just toxic. The next morning, Dan and I spent 3 hours cleaning up the shop. The insurance adjuster came by around noon and estimated the damage at about $8,000. Not devastating, but not trivial either. "You know what the worst part is?" Dan said, as we swept up broken glass. "This could have been avoided if Derek had just stayed away from your wife in the first place. Derek's not the villain here, Dan. He's just another victim. How do you figure? Think about it. Vanessa told him I was abusive, that she was trapped in a loveless marriage, that she needed his help to escape. She probably made him feel like a hero. And then? Then she used him to make me jealous, used his money to fund their affair, and used his feelings for her to manipulate the situation. When that didn't work, she tried to frame me for harassment and drag him into it." Dan stopped sweeping and looked at me. "You almost sound sorry for the guy." "I am sorry for him. He's about to find out what it feels like to be married to Vanessa Mercer." "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a Facebook post from that morning. Vanessa had changed her relationship status to engaged and posted a photo of herself wearing what looked like a very expensive ring. She's engaged? To Derek? Apparently. Posted it about an hour after he was arrested for vandalizing my shop. Dan stared at the post. That's insane. He's in jail." She's not exactly known for her timing or her sanity. But why would she get engaged now, in the middle of a divorce? Because she's desperate. Her reputation is destroyed, her friends have abandoned her, and she's facing criminal charges. Derek was her last hope for a happy ending. And now? Now, she's clinging to a fantasy. She probably thinks if she can convince everyone that she and Derek are truly in love, people will forgive her for everything else. Will they? I looked around at my trashed shop, thought about the months of lies and manipulation, the public humiliation, the harassment charges, and Derek's pathetic attempt at revenge. "No," I said. "I don't think they will." The invitation arrived on a Saturday morning, hand-delivered by a courier who looked embarrassed to be there. Vanessa Mercer and Derek Monroe request the pleasure of your company at their engagement party, I read aloud to Dove, who was making coffee in my kitchen. This Saturday evening at the Riverside Event Center. Dove nearly dropped the coffee pot. She's having an engagement party? Derek's still in jail. Actually, he made bail yesterday. Dan saw him at the grocery store looking like a man who'd been hit by a truck. And she thinks people are going to come to this party? I looked at the invitation more closely. It was printed on expensive cardstock with gold lettering and fancy borders. The kind of invitation that cost $5 each, minimum. She's invited everyone, I said, scanning the guest list printed on the back. Everyone who was at her birthday party, plus half the neighborhood. Are you going to go? I'm thinking about it. Dove stared at me. Luke, why would you put yourself through that? Because I want to see how this ends, and because I have a feeling it's going to be spectacular. Spectacular how? I didn't answer directly. Instead, I pulled out my phone and showed her a text message I'd received from Trish, Vanessa's cousin. She's lost her mind, the message read. Spent $3,000 on this party. Money she doesn't have. Derek doesn't know about the credit cards. What credit cards? Dove asked. The ones she opened in his name while he was in jail. Apparently she's been forging his signature on applications. Dove's eyes widened. That's identity theft. That's Vanessa getting desperate. The engagement party was scheduled for 7 o'clock on Saturday evening. At 6:30, I put on my best suit and drove to the Riverside Event Center. Dove had decided to stay home, claiming she didn't want to be part of whatever was about to happen. Just promise me you won't do anything that could get you arrested, she'd said. I promise. I won't have to do anything. Vanessa will destroy herself. The parking lot was nearly empty when I arrived. A few cars, mostly belonging to people I didn't recognize. None of our neighbors, none of our mutual friends. Inside, the event center looked exactly like it had for Vanessa's birthday party 2 months earlier. Same decorations, same layout, same hired bartender looking bored behind the bar. But there were maybe 15 people in a room designed for 60. Vanessa stood near the gift table, wearing a white cocktail dress and the engagement ring she'd posted on social media. She looked thin, almost gaunt, and her smile had a manic quality that made me uncomfortable. Derek was beside her, wearing a suit that didn't fit properly and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. When he saw me, his face went pale. Luke! Vanessa called out, her voice too bright, too loud. I'm so glad you came. Every conversation in the room stopped. The few guests who were there turned to stare at me, probably wondering why the ex-husband had been invited to his wife's engagement party. Wouldn't miss it, I said, walking over to them. Congratulations. Derek mumbled something that might have been thanks. Vanessa beamed like I'd just given her the greatest compliment of her life. Isn't this wonderful? She gushed. Derek and I are so happy. We're getting married next month. Next month? That's fast. When you know, Derek said, but his heart wasn't in it. And the divorce? I asked. Oh, that. Vanessa waved her hand dismissively. That's just paperwork. We both know our marriage was over long ago. Right. Just paperwork. I excused myself and walked to the bar. The bartender, the same guy who'd worked Vanessa's birthday party, gave me a sympathetic look. Rough crowd tonight, he said quietly. Where is everyone? Good question. She was expecting 50 people. We've got maybe a dozen. I ordered a beer and found a table where I could observe the room. Over the next hour, I watched Vanessa work the crowd with increasing desperation. She laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny, complimented people too effusively, and kept checking her phone like she was expecting more guests to arrive. They didn't. Around 8:30, Trish arrived with a man I didn't recognize. She looked around the nearly empty room and shook her head. Van, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. We need to talk. Not now, Trish. I'm entertaining my guests. Now. Trish grabbed Vanessa's arm and pulled her toward a corner of the room. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see Vanessa's face getting redder and redder. Then Trish pulled out her phone and showed Vanessa something on the screen. Vanessa's face went white. "Ladies and gentlemen," Trish announced, turning to address the room, "I'm afraid this party is over. There's been a development." "What kind of development?" Derek asked. Trish looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Derek, honey, you might want to check your credit report." Derek frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Your fiancée has been busy while you were in jail. 3 new credit cards, all in your name, all maxed out. She used them to pay for this party." The room went completely silent. Derek stared at Vanessa, who was backing toward the exit. "That's not true," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Show him the cards, Van," Trish said. "They're in your purse." "I don't have to show him anything." Derek walked over to where Vanessa had left her purse on the gift table. She lunged for it, but he got there first. "Vanessa, what the hell?" He pulled out 3 credit cards, all with his name on them. "When did you get these?" "I can explain." "You forged my signature. While I was in jail for trying to defend you, you were stealing my identity." The few remaining guests were edging toward the exits, clearly uncomfortable with the domestic drama unfolding in front of them. "Derek, please," Vanessa said, tears starting to flow. "I just wanted to give us a nice party. I wanted people to see how happy we are." "Happy?" Derek looked around the nearly empty room. "Vanessa, there's nobody here. Nobody came because nobody believes this is real." "It is real. We love each other." "Do we? Because I'm starting to think you just needed someone to pay your bills." That's when I decided to leave. I'd seen enough. As I walked toward the exit, I could hear Vanessa sobbing and Derek demanding to know how much money she'd spent. In the parking lot, I ran into the bartender, who was loading equipment into his van. "That was ugly," he said. "That was inevitable." "You think they'll work it out?" I looked back at the event center, where I could still hear raised voices through the windows. "No," I said. "I don't think they will." The divorce papers were filed on a Monday morning in November, exactly 6 months after Vanessa's birthday party. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Rebecca Chen, had put together a case that was both devastating and airtight. "She doesn't have a leg to stand on," Rebecca told me as we walked into the courthouse. "Adultery, financial fraud, identity theft, harassment. The judge is going to throw the book at her." "What about Derek?" "He's testifying for you. Turns out he's not too happy about the credit card fraud." That was an understatement. Derek had not only broken up with Vanessa after the engagement party disaster, he'd also pressed charges for identity theft. She was now facing criminal prosecution on multiple fronts. The hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. in Judge Patricia Williams' courtroom. Judge Williams had a reputation for being tough but fair, with little patience for games or manipulation. Vanessa arrived 5 minutes late, accompanied by a public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She'd lost weight since I'd last seen her, and her clothes hung loose on her frame. The expensive highlights in her hair had grown out, leaving dark roots that made her look older and tired. She glanced at me once, then looked away quickly. "All rise," the bailiff called as Judge Williams entered the courtroom. The proceedings were surprisingly quick. Rebecca presented our case methodically. The timeline of the affair, the financial fraud, the harassment scheme, the identity theft. Each piece of evidence was documented, photographed, and corroborated by witnesses. Derek testified first, looking uncomfortable but determined. "She told me her husband was abusive," he said when asked why he'd gotten involved with a married woman. "She said she was trapped and needed help getting out." "And you believed her?" "I wanted to believe her. She was very convincing." "When did you realize she was lying?" Derek was quiet for a moment. "When she tried to frame him for harassment. That's when I understood that everything she'd told me was designed to manipulate me." "How much money did you spend on the relationship?" About $15,000 over 6 months. Dinners, trips, gifts, her engagement ring. Money you couldn't afford? I had to sell my car and move to a cheaper apartment to pay for it all. And then she opened credit cards in your name? 3 of them. Spent about $8,000 before I found out. Vanessa's public defender tried to cross-examine Derek, but there wasn't much he could do. The evidence was overwhelming, and Derek's testimony was consistent with the documentation we'd provided. Then it was my turn to testify. Mr. Mercer, Rebecca said, how long were you married to the defendant? 5 years. During that time, were you aware that she was having an affair? I suspected it for about 6 months before I had proof. What proof? Credit card statements showing charges at restaurants and hotels when she claimed to be elsewhere. Text messages on our phone bill to Derek's number at all hours. The fact that she became increasingly hostile toward me while becoming increasingly secretive about her activities. Did you confront her about the affair? Not directly. I hoped she would end it on her own. Why? I thought about how to answer that. Because despite everything, I still loved her. I thought if I gave her space and time, she might remember what we'd had together. But that's not what happened. No. Instead, she escalated. The affair became more blatant, the financial fraud increased, and she began actively trying to destroy my reputation in the community. How so? The harassment scheme was designed to make me look like an unstable, jealous husband. She wanted to discredit me before divorce proceedings began, so that no one would believe my evidence of her adultery. Vanessa's lawyer objected to that as speculation, but Judge Williams overruled him. The defendant's actions speak for themselves, the judge said dryly. The hearing lasted 3 hours. When it was over, Judge Williams didn't need to deliberate. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of marital misconduct I've seen in 20 years on the bench, she said. The defendant has committed adultery, financial fraud, harassment, and identity theft. She has shown no remorse and made no attempt to make amends. She looked directly at Vanessa. Mrs. Mercer, your behavior has been reprehensible. You have betrayed your husband's trust, stolen his money, attempted to destroy his reputation, and committed felonies against the man you claim to love. Vanessa started to say something, but her lawyer put a hand on her arm to stop her. The divorce is granted, Judge Williams continued. Mr. Mercer will retain the marital home, his business, and all assets acquired during the marriage. Mrs. Mercer will be responsible for all debts she incurred, including the fraudulent credit card charges. Your Honor, Vanessa's lawyer said, my client has no income and no assets. She can't possibly pay. Then she should have thought of that before she committed multiple felonies, Judge Williams snapped. Furthermore, I'm ordering Mrs. Mercer to pay Mr. Mercer's legal fees in the amount of $12,000. Vanessa made a choking sound. Additionally, the judge continued, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Mrs. Mercer, you should expect to be arrested within the week. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that seemed to echo through the courtroom. It was over. Outside the courthouse, Rebecca shook my hand and congratulated me on the outcome. That was about as complete a victory as you could ask for, she said. She's going to prison, and you're free to rebuild your life. How long do you think she'll get? For identity theft and fraud, probably 2 to 3 years, assuming she pleads guilty. If she fights it, could be longer. I nodded, feeling strangely empty. I'd won, but it didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like the end of a long, exhausting ordeal. Dove was waiting for me in the parking lot. She'd taken the day off work to be there for moral support, and seeing her smile made everything feel lighter. How do you feel? She asked as we walked to my truck. Free, I said, and realized I meant it. For the first time in months, I feel free. Good. You deserve to be happy. So do you. We drove home together to the house that was now officially mine. That evening, we sat on the porch swing I'd installed the week before, watching the sunset and talking about the future. "What happens now?" Dove asked. "Now I fix everything she broke. The house, the business, my credit rating, my relationships with people in town." "That sounds like a lot of work." "It is, but it's good work, constructive work." "And us?" I took her hand. "Us. I want to build from scratch. No baggage, no complications, no lies. Just us, figuring it out as we go." She smiled. "I'd like that." 3 weeks later, I got a call from Janet Patel. "Thought you'd want to know," she said. "Vanessa pled guilty to all charges. She got 18 months in minimum security plus 3 years probation." "How's Derek handling it?" "Better than expected. He's moved back home with his parents, getting his finances sorted out. Says he's learned his lesson about getting involved with married women." "Good for him." "There's something else. She wants to see you." "What?" "Vanessa. She's asked to meet with you before she reports to prison. Says she wants to apologize." I thought about it for a long moment. "No." "No?" "I don't need her apology, Janet. I don't want to see her. I don't want to hear her excuses, and I don't want to give her another opportunity to manipulate the situation." "Okay, I'll let her know." After I hung up, I sat in my office thinking about the woman I'd married 5 years ago. The woman who'd seemed so perfect, so loving, so devoted. I wondered if that person had ever really existed, or if it had all been an act from the beginning. It didn't matter anymore. That chapter of my life was closed. Dove knocked on the office door. "Dinner's ready." "Coming." I stood up, turned off the lights, and walked toward my future. Behind me, the past faded into darkness where it belonged. 6 months later, Dove and I were married in a simple ceremony at the courthouse, with Dan and Janet as witnesses. We honeymooned in Maine, staying in a bed and breakfast where nobody knew our story and nobody cared about our past. When we got back, there was a letter waiting for me. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. "Luke," it read, "I know you didn't want to see me, but I had to write this. I'm sorry for everything I put you through. You deserved better than what I gave you. I hope you're happy now. I hope you can forgive me someday. Vanessa." I showed the letter to Dove. She read it, then looked at me. "Do you forgive her?" "I don't know. Maybe someday, but not today." "What are you going to do with the letter?" I walked to the fireplace and tossed it into the flames. We watched it burn together, the paper curling and blackening until there was nothing left but ash. "Now what?" Dove asked. "Now we live our lives." And we did. We bought a bigger house, expanded the auto shop, and started planning for the family we both wanted. We built something real and solid and honest, based on trust instead of lies. Sometimes I think about Vanessa, wondering if prison changed her, if she learned anything from the wreckage she'd made of her life. But those thoughts come less and less frequently as time passes. She'd made her choices, and I'd made mine. She chose deception and betrayal and selfishness. I chose honesty and loyalty and love. In the end, that made all the difference.